Hi, everyone, and welcome to another podcast with Shradha and I, Unpacking Organizations, where we discuss our passion topics. Hi, Shradha, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Rupert. How are you today?
Always living the dream.
Fantastic.
Unpacking Organizations, the Practitioners Podcast. Sponsored by Orgvue.
And today I'm so excited to welcome our guest to our episode, Sharon Dye Yates. Sharon, welcome.
Thank you both. Thrilled to be here.
Thank you. We are so excited to be here and to hear from you and learn from your experiences. So, Rupert, would you like to introduce Sharon? Or would you like me to do that?
I think Sharon was going to do a much better job at introducing herself than we will. Just a brief intro. So, Sharon is an org development and org design professional, does a lot of work for a big retailer, but also has some consulting work on the side as well, and is a faculty member, and so teaches. So I'd say it's quite an eclectic set of responsibilities. And what I found out is Sharon's just arrived in Atlanta from the UK. So and prior to that was California. So moving around the globe at the same time. But I think, Sharon, it's probably best for you to fill out, your background and how you ended up where you are.
Sure. I know this is cliche, but I am one of the people who gets to say, I do something that I love for a living. So even though I do experience good days and bad days, I know the cliche kind of continues on to if you find your passion and do what you do, you'll never feel like you're working. I'm not sure the end bit is as true on a daily basis for me, but there isn't a day where I'm not grateful that I get to do something that is really fully integrated into who I am and what I love. And it started because I was doing something I absolutely hated and was desperately passionate about not having that life. And a dear friend of mine worked for 3M Corporation, and she wound up applying for a job as an internal candidate to head up their organizational development department. I had no idea what that was. And she started talking about it, and I thought, that sounds amazing. I had a degree in business and a degree in psychology, so there was a natural marriage, and there it was. And fortunately for me, she was a workaholic. And so I'd finish my day job that I hated, and I'd go be her assistant and learn and learn and learn and learn. And that started me into the world of organizational development. And as Rupert said, it meant then that I got to travel all over. If there's people in a business, then I might be able to help. So that lends itself to any industry, any country, in certain cases, providing there's an interpreter. But it did all of that for me, which meant then along the way, I met my now husband, who's British. And then we decided that life without each other was less appealing than life with each other. And so I left California and moved to the UK and absolutely loved and still love my home there. And we both very much consider ourselves fortunate to be people of two countries and are grateful for the things we love about each. So that's what's led me now to where I am and doing what I'm doing in kind of 3 different ways, but all the same thing, all about 3 passions for me. So I, again, live a life of deep gratitude.
And Sharon, before we get into the 3 passions, I'm just curious, what was it about the first job that made you hate it so much? Was it the culture? Was it the people? Was it the task? Was it the workload? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it was. It was that it was exclusively, singularly task oriented. So I worked for a company that our job was to go into grocery stores and make sure the shelf space, the real estate that the products were supposed to have, they had. And so you just do that all day, rinse, repeat, and nudge, nudge, nudge into other real estate that you didn't really pay for if your values let you do that. And it was that. And so it was just 100% about the task of doing
Pure
all of that every
transactional.
day. No,
Mhm.
Pure
100%
transactional.
transactional.
Yeah.
And so I think one thing which comes to me, that what exactly was in OD space that got you so excited and that you found your passion and continued there?
So it was a couple of things on that point. One, while I absolutely love the study of psychology and the study about why people do what they do, why I do what I do, good, bad, or indifferent, why wired the way I am, what that means. So all the huge world of psychology is lifetime interest and will always be. But I'm not wired to be a therapist. I'm not wired for that kind of a way of applying psychology, which then led me to business because I like the ability to help groups of people, and in a setting in which hopefully they are unified around similar goals and purposes. And so those two things, which originally for me didn't seem to have a lot of connection, found its connection in organizational development, which is helping humans come together collectively and maximize so that they are greater than the sum of their parts and they can do more collectively than individually. That's how I view organizational development. I respect that there are more definitions than there are those of us doing it. But for me, it was that it allowed me to do both of the things I loved. So that's why.
And Sharon, you alluded to it earlier, but your three passions, and I'll give away the first one to tee it up, and then we can go to the next two. But your first passion is culture.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
I don't think this is any particular order, but maybe it is. But what is it about culture that you find so important and so relevant?
In no particular order, it is that culture, as it relates to corporations, in my experience, is very unfortunately misunderstood as undefinable, murky, etherical, catch the cloud. That's how it's viewed, and therefore, the energy to do something about it and promote it and make it more relevant and important, the energy to do that is discretionary. It's equal to the understanding. And if the understanding is low, the energy to do something about corporate culture is low, which is unfortunate because, as I've learned over the years of doing what I do, in the words of Drucker, corporate strategy, culture eats strategy. Yeah, for breakfast,
For
and in my
breakfast.
view, lunch and
Yeah.
dinner. So very early in my career, I was extraordinarily fortunate to meet a gentleman named Dr. William Schneider, who was the first to link corporate culture to bottom line business performance, meaning all the reports that a CFO and CEO are going to talk about on a regular basis. And because they understand those things, again, the effort they put to do something about those things is significant because their understanding is high. And Bill was the first one to show the linkage between culture and what winds up on those reports. And I absolutely was born again in my understanding of culture and how to help a business understand it's actually less ethereal than practical, far more practical, much more easy to do something about it and have a greater impact in your marketplace.
Could you give some examples? Because I love this framing that, because people often say if you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of what you're saying, Sharon, is if you can't understand it, you can't manage it. And
Mm-hmm.
with culture, and I think it's a lot of people would agree that culture eats strategy for breakfast and how important it is.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of people would also feel that it's undefinable and therefore hard to understand or do something about. So, could you make it practical for us, like through examples or stories, just help, to bring this to life, and how you can make it understandable and therefore tangible so you can actually do something about it?
Sure. I'll start with a, a way to think about it that hopefully will resonate. Um, if you think about how um, your air conditioner system in your home, right? Air gets pushed out through pipes and moved about and all the things. And you do that, you adjust the temperature of it based on how you feel. You're hot, you're cold. Um, so in that is a result, meaning you manipulate a thermostat, and then it impacts then how you feel in your house. So there is the way in which air moves is being cold or hot, and then the outcome of that is how you feel. And when you think about culture, if you think about it as we do things, there are things that we actually do. We perform things, we do things. And what we do will create a way in which people experience being there. The distinction I would make is what we do, I would say that's culture. I would say that the outcome of that is much more equivalent to climate, how you feel. So if I decide that outside I want to be cool, I live in Atlanta, in the summer that means wear shorts, light clothing, I'm going to make a decision about what kind of clothes I put on. I'm going to make some of those decisions, which will create a feeling when I go outside. And if you connect those two things very intentionally, then you have a connection between what you do internally as a business and what happens in your marketplace. How do people experience interacting with your business? And if they like what they experience, they're going to probably want to do more business with you. And things then just move very easily. Internal and external, meaning internal in the company, external in your marketplace, start becoming there's an ease and efficiency and effectiveness of energy, effectiveness of what you do. And it's just a lot easier to expand, to be more successful in your marketplace. So an example would be Corporate X talks about great customer service. But the employees internally experience it really hard to get their job done. Mm-hmm. It's just 16 steps to do something that would take 2, right? That's the internal way in which I go about my day. My experience internally is not going to be exceptional, easy, insert buzzwords here. Predictably, neither is the experience for the customer. They're probably going to have to fight through some things. If you have more steps internally, you're going to have more steps in your marketplace than you need. And the experience of the customer and the employee is going to have some similarity. And the employee who probably wants to do a good job, my experience most do, and wants to be well thought of and be productive, is going to try really hard to look as though things are a certain way internally that they're not. It might not happen immediately that externally it shows up, but it will over time.
Sharon, this makes a lot of sense. And I think as practitioners of organizational psychology, this is something that we have learned as also like we have experienced. But one thing which I feel is that the organization, not everybody is exposed to the same thinking, right? Like this thinking is new to a lot of people. So how do you bring all of the people along as you are introducing this kind of thinking and framework and approach in the organization? Because that I feel is not as clicky as it could be for some of us?
Sure. The way I go about it is I actually make culture this, and even the use of the word, the second part of the conversation. The first part is, what is it your business exists to do? You obviously, if you're a nuclear power plant, your answer is very different than if you're a preschool. It should be different. And if get the organization thinking about what is it we want to do in the marketplace. Get crystal clear about that in a very basic way. Kind of take out all the hyperbole, let all that happen first. Hyperbole is wonderful. It gets creative juices flowing and it gets conversation going in a way that's much more fun and engaging than if you're just going to get it all down to the basics. So start up in the clouds and keep bringing it down to its basic common denominator. What do you want to do in your marketplace? Not just industry specific, but your business within your industry. Neiman Marcus sells things that Walmart sells. They want to do something different in the marketplace. And if they get really clear about that, again, we're going external first, then we back ourselves into and say, so what needs to be true internally, culture, to do that externally with the greatest of ease?
And what you're talking about is what you do and how you feel. So what you do is the actions and the work that's being done every day.
Yeah.
So and that's what you mean by making it tangible. So tangible from the market and how we're trying to win in the market. And so from that perspective, it's very tangible and very business focused.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's extremely translating that. So how do we behave? So it's customer service.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, the main place where you work is extremely big on this.
Mm-hmm.
And people having a big sense, in your stores in terms of empowerment
Mm-hmm.
to do the right thing. And there are some famous quotes of people just behaving in that way.
Yep.
Where, someone very junior in one of your stores, just
Mm-hmm.
helping people for nothing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then all of a sudden they come and make a multi-100,000 pound purchase, because of the help that someone gave, because unseen by everyone else, but they just thought it's just the right thing to do. And that's stimulated, isn't it? And
it is.
And that's what you mean, I think.
Yes, exactly what I mean. And if we just take that another tick into it, if you think about in a retailer, if one of the things that for them is excellent customer service, again, getting it down in a basic tactical way. If what that means is you're going to come into our store and you're going to have access to expertise. You're going to talk to someone who looks at you and you describe the problem and they're the ones, I know what you need. Come with me. So if we just take that same thing and we move it internal into the organization so that we have a seamless experience, we want to hire people internally that have expertise, can listen to what needs to happen and say, I know how to do it. And then we want to resource them up so they can just then get down to the task of doing it and moving along and not make them leave their expertise at home. Bring it, because we need it inside the collective internal, like we need it inside the external experience. I might for just a moment, for this, hoping to make things even clearer, if I go back to my analogy about how I want to feel in my house. If I want to feel cool, but I have stored away all of my summer clothes, and what I have access to easily is my winter clothes. So I want to feel cool. So I got to get the step ladder. I got to go into the attic. I got to go up there. I got to unpack it right. It just starts becoming too hard to have a good experience of feeling cool in the house. But we do that all the time in an organization.
The ability to make make it easy to do the right thing.
Yeah. Yes.
To make work easy. And if I go back to your pain story, and a lot of this has to do with, the idea of positive psychology and flow as well, that you're just enjoying and you're getting reward and you're feeling like you're getting better all the time, and there's sufficient challenge. And so in your horror story, at the start of your career, it was the opposite of that. You were bored. It was too easy. It was transactional.
Mhm. Mhm.
And what you're saying is by making culture tangible and, and your situation and retail is the expertise. And that
Mhm.
means that people feel huge value because they're not there just to do the checkout. No, they're there like, I've got a problem
Mhm.
and the person in the store can help you solve that problem
Right.
and feel empowered. And
Mhm.
actually that goes to the whole narrative of what everyone talks about that
Right.
makes you, which makes you special, which is how you're competing in the marketplace.
Yes. And if that's all done, reasonably well, right? The perfection is the journey, but reasonably well. If it's done well, that meaning the internal experience maps to the external desired experience. If that's done reasonably well, the other thing that happens organically is you magnetize to your company employees that want that kind of experience, and you expel those that don't. And you get out of the cycle of endless reward programs and systems internally and fighting really hard. And we need to help make all our employees happy. Well, I would love to get every leader in a company out of the business of trying to make people feel anything. It's impossible. You can't make another human being feel anything. One experience, two people can feel very different things. But if you set up the internal experience, the way in which things are done, then people who are drawn to that, on whole, on balance, will feel more positive than negative. And they'll just want to stay. You
Yeah.
don't have to talk them into it.
You're talking about system design, basically
Mm.
changing the experience in a more systemic way rather than like sometimes we over index in trainings that, oh, let's have a mindset training and learning journeys and things, which is great as well. Like they
Mhm.
all have their places, but doing it in a more systemic way so that the whole system is responding to a single stimuli and aligned in a very holistic way. That's great. And Sharon, I don't want to lose the sight of two other passions that you spoke about. So I want you to delve into those as well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, for me, the three make up the Holy Trinity. For me, we've talked about the one. The other is change integration. And what I mean by that is something that is a bit different than change management, which is important. But in my experience, change management becomes the programmatic way in which we implement a change. And that has a moment in which it ends. We have a checklist and we have work streams and we have things extremely important. But then there's a moment in which that's done. The checklist has been, boxes have been ticked and it's done. That doesn't mean the change has been integrated. It doesn't mean that I'm still going to keep doing what it is you've been training me on and teaching me on. Now you're going to look away and you're probably going to go start managing another change. And since you're not looking, and I'm not really into this one you've just made me do, I'm going to go back and do it the old way. So we haven't integrated it. Whole lot of energy, money, time and money, two finite resources in every organization. We've just expended those. Change integration means for me at some point you start determining, is this change giving us what we needed it to be better in the marketplace? If it isn't, abandon ship, get off, move on. If it is, might need a slight tweak, but it is, keep going until it's integrated, meaning flour and water have now been mixed. They'll never be able to be pulled apart again. It's how we've always done it. That for me is change integration. The third part, the Holy Trinity, is organizational design. That we organize ourselves in a way that is integrated with the culture we need to do what we want to do in the marketplace, not the culture we want, irrelevant what you want, what do you need, based on your business objectives. And then that's going to not static, because the marketplace isn't static. You don't have to change your culture and you don't have to change what you want to do, but the marketplace is evolutionary. So, or design needs to be evolutionary. And that means that you're going to constantly then have to make some changes, maybe not constantly, but certainly consistently. So here comes change integration again. And for me, the Holy Trinity is inextricably connected. Yeah, those are my passions, those three.
Amazing.
Very cool. So, Sharon, as we are going towards the end of our podcast, and I can go talking to you forever because there's so much.
Where did 25 minutes go?
Exactly. Like there is so many golden nuggets to dig on. So maybe we can ask you to come back again.
Oh, I'd love it.
But we usually end our episode with two T's, and which is a tool and a trap. So, what is the one tool that you usually go to, or something that you really look to apply or ask your teams to apply because that's very useful and that can be useful for our listeners? And what is one trap that you always watch out for and say that no, that is not something like I can see it and we're not falling for it because we've done that enough number of time already?
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to cheat and have two tools.
Please go for it.
Yeah, but I'll give you one trap. The two tools for me, one is the work of the gentleman I mentioned earlier, Dr. William Schneider. And it is the tool that he has to help people determine what their purpose is in the marketplace and then what the culture needs. Culture Tech is the name of his tool. TEK is the name of his tool. And the other one for me, because I am have the passion I do around change, and I like hard science to back things up, there's a change implementation integration methodology based in neuroscience called the change cycle. And so that's the one for me that I lean on heavily to help me as I'm helping an organization with change. So those are the two tools that are.
I'm making notes.
And
oh, great! Those are meaningful.
What is it specifically about the change cycle that, as a tool, that you think's just briefly so relevant?
It's because it has the two things for me, which is the hard science of neuroscience, that then was used to develop the very practical, what do you need to do as a leader to help the people that are following you as they move through the predictable stages of change, meaning the neurologically predictable stages of change. So it has a practical application based on the hard science, which is probably a theme that's come through in all of this. The trap for me is when you have expertise, which is probably a combination of both experience and then just desires, passions, interests. It's tricky to bring that without leaving behind arrogance and a know-it-all, and you should just listen to me. I don't care how you've been doing it. To me, a trap is not carrying in the front of one's mind humility that says, I've never led a multi-billion-dollar company. So I walk in with some things I know and things that have been tested and tried and have worked. And what you, CEO, bring is a whole lot of experience about running a multi-million or billion or whatever the dollar amount is. You bring that. And it is equally as important. And it ought to test what I bring and help parse out what's going to be helpful and not. So to me, the trap is arrogance, in a word.
That's arrogance. A very thoughtful trap, actually. Yeah. Right? Sometimes we nerd out on our own approaches and our own thinking, and we need to bring empathy as we listen into where the problem exactly is.
Well, what I find interesting with is extremely competent people who've achieved insane things in their lives, in my experience, are very rarely arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the causality is. All I know is when I've had the pleasure to meet such people and spend time with them, I don't see a bone of arrogance.
Yeah.
And the opposite's often true. Where someone is really, really arrogant, it's I mean, this is not a scientific study, but it's they're hiding something, and they're actually very insecure about something.
Yeah.
So I wonder if if you share the same experience, Sharon, with that.
I do. I have found arrogance. My terminology over the years has become it's a gap filler. I have a gap of something, confidence, experience, whatever the gap is, and I got to fill that with something. And frequently, probably not always, but more frequently than not, in my experience, it's filled with arrogance. I want to
never thought about
influence,
it
and
that way. Gap filler. I mean, you're saying the same thing that I was saying, but in a much more eloquent way. And it's a
you were
lovely
saying about
framework. You're filling a gap.
insecurities.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
that's a very thoughtful way to just wrap it up, because I'm already thinking about it and I will continue to think about it. So thank you so much, Sharon, for joining us today and sharing your stories and sharing your Holy Trinity and the gap fillers and the tools and the traps. So we really enjoyed this conversation, and
me too.
I'm sure our listeners would do as well.
Yeah. Thank you both very much. And thanks for the thoughtful questions and conversation. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.
Unpacking Organizations, the Practitioners Podcast. Sponsored by Orgvue.